Hello, everyone. My name is Ryan Lim. Welcome back to another episode of the MSNS podcast. I am a junior one and your host. And today with me, we have a very special guest. Her name is Cassy. She graduated in 2013 and now she is a pediatrics nurse.
Yep.
Welcome.
Hi.
How are you doing?
Thanks. Good. How are you?
I'm doing good. I think this is a really exciting one because I feel like pediatrics is such a very popular area of nursing, especially, just hearing it from all my peers saying, just even right out of the gate, they want to go straight into, like, right out of high school, they already knew, like, immediately they wanted to do pediatrics. Was that something that was similar for you, or did it kind of take time, like in senior one, where you kind of found out?
No, I knew right away. I wanted to be a pediatrician in high school, and I didn't want to go to med school. So I knew if I went into nursing, I would go like straight into pediatric nursing. And then we hit senior one, and then I loved it. Good, because if I didn't really have a backup.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, no. So I knew right away, and then it just kind of confirmed it once I went through senior one.
Okay. And before we talk about kind of your new grad journey and what happened between like senior two to when you got your first job, was there
Mm-hmm.
anything specifically in nursing school that you did that felt like increases your chance of getting a job, like whether it was like babysitting or some sort of internship or CNA, anything like that? Did you do any of that in nursing school?
Yeah, so I babysat from probably like when I was a freshman two through like until I got my first job. Um, I also tutored like for half of my nursing school career, but I tutored outside of nursing school, so it was like high
Mm,
schoolers and
I see.
middle schoolers and stuff. What else did I do? I think those were the major ones. I worked in the LRC. Um, I don't know if it's still called LRC, but I worked in a skills lab
Mm-hmm.
and as a TA, which they don't do anymore from what I've heard, but that kind of helped me with my skills. So I don't know if that kind of helped me get a job, not just in pediatrics, but just in general.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But you getting a job, from what I remember, the last time we spoke was a very long and difficult process because you said
Yeah.
that you graduated in December, I believe, of 2013, but then you didn't get
Mm-hmm.
your job until February 2015. Can you tell me about like that timeline and like
Yeah.
why it was a longer process than maybe some people think it would be?
Yeah. Well, I graduated at like kind of a rough time. So when I graduated in 2013, the BRN, which is like the Board of Registered Nursing, they usually give you a authorization to test for you to take your NCLEX. And so when I got mine, it was when the BRN was switching over from paper system to computer system. And so everything was delayed. So I didn't get my authorization to test. I graduated in December. I didn't get it until March of 2014.
Wow.
And then in between December, like graduating in December and getting my ATT, I was studying a little bit, but I didn't really like study because I didn't have a test date yet. So then when I got my ATT, I took a month to study. So then I took my test in April of 2014. And usually you're supposed to find out within like a couple days whether you passed or not. I didn't find out for like 2 weeks. So I didn't find out
Wow.
until like I think mid-April or early May. I don't remember.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that took a while. And then by the time I finished, like I passed and everything, by the time I figured that out, it was already like mid-May.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it took a while. And then and then I started job hunting. So when you start job hunting as a new grad, you'll find out that some of the new grad programs don't consider you a new grad anymore after like a year after you get
Really?
your license, or no, after you graduate. So your year when I graduated was December 2013, so I had until December 2014
Oh,
really
I see.
to find
Okay.
a job.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of cut my time in half, seeing that I didn't get my um, license until May.
Mm-hmm.
So everything took a while.
But but even then, you still like held out because that's a big thing that I feel like it's a very hugely it's a big decision for new grads, because when I'm talking to my friends right now who graduated, it's like it's a difficult choice between like holding out for something that you really want to do, your dream job, versus, you know,
Yeah.
maybe settling for something that you might not wasn't your first choice, getting a lot of experience, and then moving to something you like more. But you chose the former route, which is like holding out a little bit longer, right?
Yeah. So, I guess we talked about when we first talked how I got my first job or started my job in February of 27, no, 2015.
2015.
2015. So if I had taken like an adult med surg job or home health or SNF or something different, I probably could have gotten a job earlier. I applied to pediatric hospitals everywhere. I applied to Chicago, Seattle. At that time in the Bay Area, there was a hiring freeze, so UCSF wasn't hiring. Children's Oakland is part of UCSF, so it's kind of the same thing. And Lucille Packard, where I'm working now, but at that time wasn't hiring either. And so I either had to choose to go out of state or out of the Bay Area, um, or like to settle for something that wasn't pediatric. So I did hope and hold on to the hope that I would get a pediatric job. So I applied to Chicago, Seattle, San Diego is where I ultimately ended up. Um, but I applied everywhere in hopes of just getting pediatrics. And I figured, well, if I wasn't going to get a pediatric job and I was past my year of like since I graduated, then I could end up in like home health or something and hopefully end up in pediatrics. But then I got lucky and Rady Children's Hospital in San Diego hired me to start in February of 2015. But when they called me for an interview, it was October of
Oh, okay.
2014.
Okay.
So that process took a while too. So I did like they called me for an interview in October. I didn't interview until like December/January. Oh no, I take that back. I applied in October, didn't hear back from them until December.
Ooh,
Interviewed in
ooh,
January and
that's
then
a
got the
lot.
job in
That's long.
February. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, so yeah, when I took the job in February, it was like past my year of graduation. But that was kind of my last hope. Like if I wasn't getting the job at Rady's, I was having to like look into something else. So
Hmm.
I'm glad they hired me. I was really, really lucky.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah,
Yeah.
so
And before we like move forward, I wanted to backtrack on something about, you know, your nursing journey and something that stood out when we were doing the interview. But correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like I remember you saying something about your senior two capstone. It was in peds, and you said that if
yeah.
that it was important that you have, if you want to go to pediatrics, that you have a capstone in peds. Does that,
Yeah.
oh, sorry, like, yeah, does that mean like if you don't have your capstone in peds, does that kind of hinder you in any way?
Um, I think if you get a capstone in peds, it is definitely like a giant, not push, but like opportunity for you to have. It does give you like a lead, um, kind of, I don't know what I'm trying to say, but like it gives you an advantage. That's the
Okay.
word. It gives you an advantage um, compared to like everyone else that's applying. So I think the process for when you apply and you turn your application in, they pull out keywords. HR pulls out keywords, and having a capstone in pediatrics is one of like the keywords um, for your application to go through.
Okay.
Um, so it does give you an advantage, but that doesn't mean that like you not having a capstone in peds, that doesn't mean that you
Hmm.
absolutely won't get a job. Because one of the new grads that just got hired like about a year ago, she didn't have a capstone in peds. She actually
Hmm.
came from, I think like University of Oregon or something, Oregon State. She came from out of state, and her capstone was an adult med surg.
Okay.
So I don't think it's like 100% you won't get the job,
Hmm.
but it does definitely get you an advantage in getting a pediatric job if you
Okay.
did a capstone in peds.
And so for if I'm hearing right, you're saying that like even before you can like get into the door with, for an interview, or like even have like someone in nursing, like look at your resume, they goes to HR first, where there's like no
Mhm.
nursing experience at all. All they're doing is just looking for specific keywords, and that's kind of how you have to get through the door at first.
That's what I've heard. It's not 100% confirmed by like HR or by management or
Hmm.
anything. But as a new grad going into, I was part of this program called a Vizient program. If you get into a new grad program, every hospital kind of has their own program. And so Radies at that time had used Vizient. No, Versant. They use Versant. Lucille Packard now used to use Versant, but now they use Vizient. And so when you apply for these programs, you turn in your application, and I've been told that it goes through HR, and HR uses some kind of program because there's so many, there's like thousands of applicants for these new
Yeah.
grad positions. And so I don't think they do it by hand. I think it goes through the system. And um, like if you have a pediatric capstone, I feel like that kind of weeds those applicants out.
Hmm.
If you maybe go to a certain school, sometimes I think like USF and Stanford have some kind of partnership. That's not super confirmed either, but I think like having gone to USF or like Samuel Merritt, SF State, those are very popular. I think that kind of helps weed it through too. Um, not 100% sure, but that's what I've heard is that,
Hmm.
like, yes, it goes through HR first, for sure. That is for sure.
Yeah.
Goes through HR first before it lands in the hands of like the management team of the unit that you're applying for.
Okay, but also a big one that you mentioned in the past that might kind of give a lot of people hope that still want to stay in California is that if you look, beyond the Bay Area, sometimes like where you live or where you're from actually might be an important factor because you grew up in the Bay Area and got a job in San Diego, and you said that there could have been a case where because they wanted a little bit more diversity in where people were
Hmm.
from, that could have been a potential factor in why you were hired in San Diego.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard that too. Like when you apply for college, how they go through like diversity, making sure they have like different ethnicity groups and people from different areas. I think that's the same thing when um, they take applicants into like their new grad program, is that they want diversity, not just from like the same schools, they want like different schools. And so when I applied for Radies in San Diego, I was one of two that were from the Bay Area versus a lot of their other new grad people were from like San Diego State or USD or National University. So I think that kind of helped me. But if you're looking for a job in the Bay Area, I think that also helps because you're from the Bay Area, so they know you're
Mhm.
not going to leave.
That's true.
They know like you're going to stay, and the turnover rate won't be that high because you're from the Bay Area, so there's no reason why you're going to leave to go elsewhere
Hmm.
unless there's a major life change. But a lot of our new grads at Packard come from a ton come from USF, Samuel Merritt, SF State, Dominican, Chico, like the Sonoma, those are very far and few in between, but definitely USF is a huge one.
Oh, that's a lot of hope for all of us.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then so let's talk about like you got the job in San Diego and you
Mhm.
had to move out there. What was that like? I always like asking that for people who move really far away because same for me. I was born in San Francisco, live in Daly City my whole life. So I don't know how it's going to be like when I graduate, and then I think it's important to hear these perspectives from people that have been in the Bay Area their whole lives and then suddenly
Yeah.
move elsewhere.
Yeah, it was really hard at first. I got really, really homesick. I thought when I graduated high school, I thought I was going to go to like UC Irvine or UCSD, LA. I thought I was going to go to SoCal initially or like out of state, because that was my dream, like out of high school. And then I decided to go to USF, so I stayed. I lived at home. Um, I mean, I live in San Bruno, so I'm not super far from USF at all. And my dad works in the Richmond district. And so I was like really like just in the Bay Area my entire life. So when I applied for San Diego and Chicago and Seattle, I didn't know if they were going to take me. Um, but like I said, San Diego was kind of my last hope. Like if I didn't take the job, then I would probably not be in pediatrics right
Mhm.
away. And so, sorry to light.
No
Um,
worries.
and so I knew I had to go. So I like signed a contract. They didn't have anything saying like I had to stay there for 2 years or anything like that. Some hospitals do have that where you sign a contract and you have to stay for like a year or two. And if you
Mhm.
leave before your contract ends, you have to pay out. Radies didn't have anything like that. Um, and so I thought, I'll go, I'll put in my year. Once I get my experience, I'll come back to the Bay. So probably the first 6 months when I moved down there, 6 to like 9 months, I was super homesick.
Mm.
I was probably coming back home like once every month or once every month and a half. Um, I also like I said I was like babysitting up here before I took the job. And so I felt like I had roots here. I also interned at this bone marrow registry called Asian American Donor Program. And so I basically like networked out when I was here. And when I took the job in San Diego, I felt like I was kind of leaving all that behind, like all that
Mm.
hard work behind. Um, but I was like, well, I have to do it. So yeah, really homesick. And then I ended up loving it. It really helped that I was part of a new grad program, like the Versant program. And so there were 17 of us, I think, all in different units,
Mm.
but all kind of in the same boat. So that kind of helped because I wasn't just like one new grad and like on an entire unit. We had mentoring sessions and debriefing sessions and classes. And so that kind of just helped like make me feel welcome to San Diego, I guess. There was one girl from that is from SoCal, but she went to SF State and she didn't know anyone. Um, and like they were very, very helpful in just
Mm.
making me feel welcomed in San Diego. And then I love the beaches and I love the weather and I love living on my own because, I lived at home and then I went down. And
Mhm.
so, um, and like my preceptors were great. And so I ended up loving it. And then I actually didn't move back for like 2.5, 3 years.
Wow.
Um, Initially, I thought I was only going to stay a year. So,
Mhm.
and it really helped. Like, I kind of took it as, well, I didn't get to go anywhere for college. I stayed home. So that was kind of my like, oh, now I'm like on my own and get to like live on my own and everything. So, I mean, at first it was really hard. And then it became really hard to leave San Diego to come
Ah,
back.
I
But
see, I see.
yeah.
Okay. And those classes that you were talking about during your new
Hmm.
grad program, can you talk a little bit about more about that and how that all worked? Because for me, I think of, pediatrics is like just one semester, even technically like maybe like half a semester out of
Yeah.
USF. I imagine that you have to learn like what a whole new set of vital signs, positioning, maybe different procedures, or you kind of have to alter certain procedures specifically for the kids, right? Like, how was that like
Yeah.
learning everything again?
Yeah. So it was like really unfortunate that, at USF, like senior one, you only get half of the semester and then you get half maternity, which was, I guess that was kind of my backup if I didn't get peds. So that's where your capstone comes into play too, though. Like
Mm, yeah.
having a pediatric capstone really helps because then it opens your eyes to more pediatrics. I did my capstone in peds hemonc, oncology. And so that was very different too. Um, as part of the Versant program, and if you end up at Lucille Packard, we have the Vizient program now, but they're essentially the same thing. You attend these classes. I don't know how Packard does their Vizient classes, but at Rady's, our Versant classes, they um, teach you a little bit of everything. Like they bring in experts on certain topics, and so they kind of teach you a little bit of everything. So you kind of get a review of like GI system, respiratory system, like the things you'll see very frequently, and then all the different like specialties that are also there or like ancillary staff. So like social work, vascular access, like there's different people that come and talk to you. Um, I was at Rady's, I was on the medical unit. So we saw everything, like every diagnosis, except for surgical, that was his own floor, and except for oncology, that was his own floor, um, and cardiac, that was his own floor. But we saw like endocrine, respiratory, GI, like general pediatrics, everything that you can think of pretty much. And so it was really nice that we had classes because then they would teach you a little bit of everything
Mhm.
and give you like a review. Um, but yes, like vital signs, totally different in pediatrics. Medications, really different in pediatrics. Everything is weight based. Procedures, I mean, the procedures, like you have the same things, like you have an x-ray or you have like ultrasound, but then like they can't really teach you, but you learn to like tailor it to kids, like
Mhm.
you know. But then you also have, you're in pediatrics, but you have very different age groups. You have like babies, like almost newborns, up until like 18 to like 22-year olds. So you have a very large range. So they can't really like teach you how to talk to different age groups,
Yeah.
but as through experience, like you'll learn that. But the classes were just kind of like going over different systems and different diagnoses that you'll see and different like what procedures they'll do versus that kind of thing. But the classes were really helpful, and then it was like I think 18-week program. I don't really remember. Maybe a little 9 to 18 weeks, I would say. I don't remember specifically how long it was.
Mm.
Um, but I know like at Lucille Packard, they also have classes similar to those as well.
Yeah,
So it's nice because then you get a review because you know, who knows how long you've been out of nursing school by that time.
that's true. And what was your favorite part of like, even you can say like what's your favorite part now or like back then as well? What was your like favorite part about being in pediatrics? I imagine, because of the ranges of, or ranges of like ages that you'll see, and
Yeah.
because it's such a important and crucial part of like our developmental stages. Like, what was your favorite part about that whole thing?
Um, like my favorite part in pediatrics.
Mhm.
I think like just the kids in general. Um, that was that is my favorite part. I mean, I love toddlers. That's my favorite age group. But I think like having, because they're so resilient, and I aside from doing my clinical rotations in adults, I've never really worked with adults. I look really young for my age, and so when I worked with adults, I felt like I had no right to tell them what to do. With kids, they're always younger than you, so it's a lot easier. Granted, you have to deal with the parents too, but like
Mhm.
just strictly with the kids alone, it's just easier to like tell them what to do. They usually do it for the most part. Um, and just like playing with them and interacting with them. They like a lot of times when I did my capstone in pediatric hemonc um, with kids with cancer, they aren't so focused on like them having cancer. Like they still want to be kids. They still want to have fun. Like Halloween's always really fun. Christmas is always really fun at the hospital. Um, it sucks that they're there, but we try to make it really fun for them, and they still act like kids. And
Mhm.
so it's not a lot of like, it's a lot of sadness because it sucks. Like sick kids, just it's sad in general, but it's easy to like also forget like that they are there for a certain reason when they just want to have fun. And so I think that's my favorite part,
Mhm.
um
Yeah, I
back
was.
then and also now.
Yeah, because yeah. Also, yeah, I want to ask about that too. How how it affects you? Because I think it's great that you talk about how like part of your job isn't just to like focus on the medical physiological aspects
Mhm.
of the children, but also just helping them out mentally, emotionally, and just honestly because they're kids. Like part of it is just having fun and helping them have fun. Because I remember when I was a kid, I had a heart condition. I don't know if you know what it is, but it's like called WPW, Wolf Parkinson White. And the nurses were a big part of how I was able to just stay calm and not really worry about my heart, honestly. Like they just kept everything lively and it was very fun. But I felt like, so as a kid, it was always, I was always just thinking about myself and, how it was affecting me. But I think as I've gotten older, I've kind of realized, oh, like how do the nurses feel through all this? Seeing so many kids you know, whether they're going to be healthy after a while or, you know, they're potentially going to, you know, die. Like, how does that affect you guys?
It definitely has affected me, a lot. I feel before I went into pediatric nursing or before I was a nurse or even during nursing school, I wanted like 4 or 5 kids myself. Um, and then after I've been a nurse for like a little over 5 years now, and it definitely has affected me in terms of like I forget there are healthy kids out there. Sounds kind of crazy.
Mm.
Um, but that's what I see like day in and day out, like sick kids. I'm still on a medical floor, so we see, and we do medical and also surgical as well. We're just a med surg floor, so we see like neurosurgery and ortho and all the things I mentioned earlier. And so it kind of sucks because you forget that like there are healthy kids out there and like, there's a lot of things like um, just certain diseases or that kind of thing only have a certain percentage of like kids having it. Like not every kid's going to be sick. So it has affected me in that way, and now I just want like maybe like 1 or 2 healthy kids or 3, maybe not 4 or 5 anymore. But yeah, so it has affected me in that way. But I don't know if like having kids and then going into pediatric nursing would have been any better, because then there are certain things when you go into pediatric nursing, um, you encounter a lot of diseases or syndromes or just all those things that you have never heard of before. Like there's all these like really, really rare syndromes that we get that I never knew was a thing. Um, and so I think that's what's scary.
Hmm.
And also like doing like pediatric oncology, it kind of sucks because then like, oh, like it sucks when kids have cancer. It sucks when
Hmm.
anyone has cancer. But it definitely sucks when kids have cancer.
Yeah.
And so I think that's been really hard. It's just remembering that there are healthy kids out there. Also, it sucks that like you could have a healthy kid and then they like regress or something happens later that you can control. And I mean, anyone who's sick, like adults who are sick, that's also very sad. But I think like when you have kids that are sick, it just sucks because they have only, lived a couple years or a
Hmm.
few years, like they haven't lived their entire life yet. Not
Hmm.
saying that sick adults aren't also sad, but um, a lot of times on a medical floor, it's great because sometimes they come in for like a broken arm and it's like, okay, great, like you're fine,
Hmm.
you get to leave. Other times it's not as great because then we have a lot of cystic fibrosis kids. um, I don't know if you guys have like really learned about cystic fibrosis
A
yet,
little
but
bit, but yeah.
yeah, I think that's one of like the worst diseases out there. And like we'll have kids that come in a ton, like every couple months for what we call tune-ups. And so you'll have like chronic kids that come in. Um, I don't know. You also get kind of jaded from it too.
Mm, okay.
Um, after being a nurse for so long. And so you kind of have like compartmentalize it too, where like you have to not think about it, um, and find a good work-life balance. So it it does affect you. Like I don't think any of my coworkers would ever say like being a peds nurse, they haven't been affected by it in their personal life at all. So
Yeah, I
I
like how
think
you.
you just, yeah. Go on.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, no, no, sorry, no, no. I was just gonna, yeah, reinforce what you said. Like, I liked how you pointed out maybe some of the hardships that come with pediatric nursing, because I think a lot of people go in for, of course, the pros. You know, you get to work with
Yeah.
kids, which is so amazing. You know, everybody's so lively, but then there's also some of the cons of, you know, dealing with people, dealing with death, dealing with a lot of desensitization because of how much you see. And
Yeah.
I can imagine how hard it is because, you know, like you were saying, you know, these kids, they have so much potential for life. You know, they haven't lived kind of the life that, you know, you or I, like, oh, well, we're still young, but like, you know, like
Yeah,
adults,
but
yeah.
no, same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's just
Like you have
hard.
like really little kids
Hmm.
that, it sucks that they're sick and
Hmm.
you don't know if they'll get better sometimes. And so Yeah, I don't think anyone really talks about that when you're in nursing school. I mean, I remember my pediatric instructor, not my clinical instructor, but like your theory class instructors, like mine was telling me that she recommends at least doing a capstone in pediatric oncology because she's like, you don't know what it's like until you actually do it, and like someone's got to do it, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so you could see like if you like it. um and it's funny because I did my capstone in hemonc, and that's what I applied all my jobs in except radies, because radies didn't have an opening for external applicants in hemonc. And so I ended up in medical over there, and I loved it because in hemonc, like it's great, like you make such a difference, but it's also like the kids don't always get better. Like they might be in remission and then they relapse. One of my best friends is in pediatric hemonc right now, and I don't know how she does it. Um, but when I was on a medical floor, like for the most part, like you get to fix the kid and then they get to go home. Um, and so that part I really like. But yeah, a lot of times no one talks about in nursing school how hard pediatrics is, because everyone's like, oh, it's all fun and games and bubbles and everything. And then I think when you're in it, you just start to realize that like, oh, it actually has a huge impact on like your own life.
Mhm.
um but yeah.
Yeah, but that being said, clearly you've been in this, you're still in pediatrics. So,
Yeah.
like no matter how hard, things can be at times, I can definitely tell, like just from hearing what you're saying, that you still love peds. Like, even though you see some of that stuff, whether it's like daily basis, weekly or monthly, like you still love it. Like you still want to be with the kids
Yeah.
and help them out, right?
Yeah, you still want to make a difference. You still like, I mean, it's all I've ever really known, because I mean, I only got a little bit of like med surge, adult med surge, and all that stuff in like clinicals. Um, but like with that being said, nursing is so versatile. And so like if you get really burnt out from inpatient peds, there's also like outpatient stuff you could do. You could go to clinic or urgent care or school nursing. Like there are other avenues you could go through without doing inpatient nursing. If it's too much for you, which eventually it does burn a person out. Some nurses have been there for like ever. Like they start out as new grads inpatient and they keep going until they retire. I don't know where I'm going to be on that spectrum, but so far I'm still in it and it's okay. And yeah,
Mm.
so
Okay. And I don't mean to like keep diving into like the cons, but I did remember you saying like early on about dealing with the family, because that's
mm-hmm.
something that I actually have heard of, like instructors saying like, oh, you like a lot of people, peds is awesome, but one thing you gotta do is you gotta deal with the family. And like understandably they're gonna be concerned for their kids. They don't know what's happening to their kids, and they're just trying to be protective, I imagine. So how do you kind of deal with that? Hello, can you hear me, Cassie? Oh no, I'm gonna pause for a second, sorry guys. Hello, hello. Okay.
Yeah,
Sorry
yeah,
everyone for the pause. Also, I apologize for the lighting. I was trying to fix that. My apologies for that too. But yeah, going back to the parents and all that. Yeah, I was just
yes.
saying how like I can imagine, because I know from my experience in the hospitals with my heart condition, like how my mom and dad were, and I was wondering like how do you kind of deal with it or help the family
Yeah.
and
I
all that.
feel like that is the number one thing that people talk about not wanting to go to pediatrics for, is dealing with the parents.
Hmm.
And that's always everyone's fear. Um, I don't think it's all that bad. I mean, I'm currently precepting a girl who came from adult med surge, and she had told me the same thing, that her number one fear was talking to the parents.
Hmm.
And then we went through her first week of orientation. And she's like, you know what? It's actually the same thing. Like it's like talking to an adult patient, um, but it's a parent of the patient. And so you kind of get, I feel like in all fields of nursing is the same thing. You'll have some parents who are very, very particular and like very protective of their child, and then understandably so. but you'll also have parents who like know that you're the expert in what you do and care for their child and help out, but also like give you the space to do what you need to do to help their child feel better. Um, so you have both ends, and then you'll have really heavy psychosocial needs for some families, and some families are great. Um, so it depends. It's really not that bad.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, I don't think it's I think it's a little better because or a little easier sometimes because you have the parents there who help take care of their kid, who help you with like little things most of the time, like diaper changes or giving meds. A lot of times you can give the medication to the parent and they'll give it, um, versus you trying to force a child to take medication. Um, and I've heard that like in adults, a lot of times the family members aren't there, which sucks. Like they keep calling, and checking up on their mom or their dad or what have you. But they never show up. And a lot of times the parents are always there. Not always, but a lot of times they are. Um, and it also depends on like what field you end up in. Because in NICU, parents aren't they don't have space for parents to stay, so the parents aren't there.
Mm,
Um,
okay.
versus just like a med surge floor, we have space for them to stay. So we would rather have them there.
Hmm.
So it depends, but it's not that bad.
Hmm.
I wouldn't say that's like the worst thing in the world,
Hmm.
but
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
definitely do learn how to talk to the parents and the patient. And
Hmm.
so I think, you eventually get used to it. I think like initially you get kind of scared because you're like, how do I tell these parents like about their really sick kid? Or like they're so worried. But then you start to learn that there are a lot of chronic kids in the hospital whose parents are totally used to hospital stays. Um, and then you learn like some parents are like, it's a broken arm or it's just like acute illness. And so then you learn how to talk to them too. Um, but yeah, no, it's not that bad.
Yeah, I don't think. Yeah, I don't think that you know the parents or like the dealing with the family should be a deal breaker in any way.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, something I did want to bring up. It just came to my head. It's kind of sad, but I do want to ask this. Is
Yeah.
so we talked a lot about the supportive parents, the ones that are overprotective, and you like just
Mm,
want to care for them so much. But how about when the parents are not supportive, or specifically, what if um, for instance, you see signs of abuse, sadly, child abuse.
mm.
Like I don't know, have you ever had a experience like that before, or like do you like yeah, what would you do in that case if like you do? Because we get a lot of training on that, right? Like all these modules, but I don't think there's no amount of like lectures or modules I don't think that could teach me versus like having someone who's experienced, or like me going through that experience before I actually learn what to do.
Yeah, I think that depends on your hospital's like policy and procedure, like what they would do. I mean, for I worked at two hospitals and they're generally the same thing. Like if you suspect abuse, um, then you are a mandated reporter. Or if the kid says something like you're a mandated reporter. So then you have to like obviously alert the correct, hierarchy of people or whatever. So we would like tell social work. Um, usually social work is the one to report it. And then CPS gets involved. And once CPS gets involved, it's kind of out of our hands,
Mhm.
like as a nurse or as a hospital. Once they are involved, they do their investigation. And then if it is warranted and it is true, then the kid gets taken out of their parents' care. Um, and then they start to find like a foster family or whatever for the kid. Um, there's been instances in both hospitals I worked at that this has happened, and it sucks, but like, I mean, we're a hospital, and so they're there for like medical care. So once they're medically cleared, we kind of just hopefully they find foster care for them or whatever,
Mhm.
but then they go to foster care and then like we don't really do anything else. So it sucks. when that happens, but I think it's just kind of like part of the job. I don't
Mm-hmm.
think we do anything special in terms of that. We with kids there is like there's just not like physical abuse, but there's like other things like Munchausen's by proxy. It's where like so there's Munchausen's where like you think you're sick and you keep going to the hospital. By proxy
Oh,
is when
I've heard
someone
of
else
that.
does it to you.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And so it it ranges in like the kid's not sick and the parents keep doing things that say that they keep saying like they are sick, and then the kid is sick and then the parents make it worse. So that is also abuse, and then they also get taken out of their parents' care, but that's really hard to prove.
Mm-hmm.
And so we get a lot of those cases too. But yeah, I mean, we see it and it happens, and then we just go through like social work and reporting it to CPS, and then they go to foster care, that kind of thing.
Yeah. I feel like like the sad part is that's kind of when that jadedness or car like where you like compartmentalize everything, that's kind of where I guess it comes in handy, because as much as emotional as you want to be, as much as you want to care for these people, you kind of have to
Yeah,
realize that there has to be some separation between like your
yeah.
personal and professional life.
You do learn how to set boundaries. That is very important, I think, in pediatrics. And that is when you first go to training. That is stuff that they talk about in all trainings, is that you have to learn to set boundaries. Like, I mean, in any form of nursing, but also in pediatric nursing, like you can't be friends with them on Facebook or the parents, like that kind of thing is the same thing. Like you can't get too attached, or it takes a lot out of you. Like it already takes a lot out of you just like baseline, but if you get really attached, it takes like a lot out of you. Not saying that it doesn't happen, because it definitely does. And we do get very attached to our patients and
Mm,
the families. Um, but you also have to keep in mind that, yeah, you have to keep yourself separate, um, because otherwise it does more harm than good.
yeah. And do you think that the way that you are personally, like your personality, your character, do you think that's why you are a good pediatric nurse? Like, do you think there are certain traits that a pediatric nurse has that makes them good versus someone who may not be like either not like pediatric nurse or doesn't feel like they're cut out for it, if you know what I mean?
Um, I mean, I think like first and foremost, you definitely have to like working with kids.
Yeah, I imagine. Yeah.
Um, like you have to have patience. um, I don't think I've met anyone who like didn't want to be a pediatric nurse who ended up in pediatrics. I feel like you definitely like
You have to
usually
actively
when
seek out
yeah,
that.
you have to like want to be the
Mhm.
pediatric nurse to be in that. But no, I think like having patience is very important in like our job to begin with. But like working with kids, I think you definitely have to have patience. And um, I mean that's about it. As nurses, you're like and you're already like caring and like you want to like help people. But yeah, I mean, other than like having patience and like wanting to work with kids, I think that's the
Okay.
most of it. And then like everything else, I mean, I think just comes with experience. Like the whole thing that we are just talking about, like caring too much or like being too attached, like that will just you'll just have to like you can't care too much and like not want to be a pediatric nurse. Like that
Mhm.
doesn't mean that you're not cut out for it.
Mhm.
I think you just have to learn to like, like put it aside and like all that stuff. But yeah, I don't think like anyone who doesn't want to be a pediatric nurse, I don't think they end up being a peds nurse.
Okay. Yeah, because I was just trying to think of certain trends that I saw like when I was there, and just because
Mm-hmm.
everybody seems like super upbeat and like very positive and just like happy all the time, but I was always wondering, like, are all pediatric nurses like that, or do you feel like maybe like it kind of comes with being a pediatric nurse, like, oh, you start being like very happy,
Uh,
or is it, like I don't want to say it like this, but like I definitely feel like you know you as a person, like like during like a peer-to-peer interaction with your family, with your friends, like I feel like we all have different personalities like within ourselves, like in
Mm-hmm.
different moments. And I feel like as providers, and when we like go to a patient's room, whether they're pediatrics or adult, I think we do kind of hype ourselves up in a sense, or kind of be like act a little bit like, whether it's like more
Yeah.
polite or something,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. No, I don't think like, I mean, we're not all happy and we're not all bright and cheery. We are only like that when we go into the room. You definitely have, it's funny, but you definitely have a lot of like darker nurses on the unit. There's different personalities.
Hmm.
Um, of like, we're not all happy and cheerful and excited to be there. At the end of the day, it's still work. And so I think like we put on that persona when we go into patients' rooms, in peds or in adults. Um, but you definitely have nurses who are really tired and just very like burnt out, and we just try not to carry that in the room. But
Hmm.
yeah, no, I don't think like peds nurses are happier than like adult nurses. But like you also have a lot of different personalities just in with all the different floors, like of
Oh yeah.
NICU and pediatric ICU and medical surgical like hemonc. I mean, you have all the different personalities. So no, I don't think we're happier than an adult nurse. Sometimes adult nurses can be way happier than us.
Yeah, but so what, for like personally for you, what keeps you in
Hmm.
pediatrics? Like I know you said that's like that's all you've been doing, that's all you've known, but
Yeah.
do you have like a specific story with a specific like patient or anything that kind of makes you keep going? Like I think
Um,
everybody has like a meaning, or like kind of some sort of motivation that keeps them going in nursing. Like do you have anything like that?
um, no, I don't think so. I feel like, I mean, yes, it's like all I've ever known, but that doesn't mean that like in 20, 30 years down the line, I might still be a nurse. I'm hoping that I'll still be a nurse because we went through very intense schooling for it
Yeah.
and getting our license and all that stuff. But I think like I love like caring for the kids and I like love doing what I do and making a difference and everything. And it is like everything that I know. Like we went to so much schooling for it and we've studied so much for it. And it's cool because like there's different, like you still learn something new every day. Um, so I think like what keeps me in it is just knowing that like there's so many different things I can do within this one job. Like just from being a bedside nurse to being like a preceptor to being a charge nurse, or like management in the future. Like there's so many different aspects of it that you could go into if you don't want to do bedside. I think that's what's keeping me a nurse too, is that like there's still so many options if I don't want to do what I'm
Yeah.
currently doing. What's keeping me inpatient is still like I like working the 3 days a week. I work 12-hour shifts. And so I like doing that, but I also um, just like caring for the kids in general. I don't think like it's like it makes it fun, and also just you learn something new every day. And
Hmm.
like I said before, the kids are so resilient and they teach us so much, um, that I don't know. It's just nice like feeling like I'm making a difference, I guess,
Hmm.
is what keeps
That's
me
awesome.
in it for the most part. Yeah.
That's awesome. And speaking of those, what is it? You were saying how you work 3 days a week and that you have your 12-hour
Hmm.
shifts. Um, I was excited for this podcast specifically because you are like a night shift nurse, and I don't think I've interviewed or met one who's a night shift nurse, and I honestly like I want to know more about that. And like I just first of all I commend you because I have clinicals from 3 p.m. to just 11 p.m. and I'm already
Oh
tired.
gosh.
I don't know how, so I can't imagine what you went through like when you first started out being a night shift nurse. Can you talk a little bit
Yeah.
about that?
I I think like baseline as a person, I'm much more of a night person than I am a morning person. So that helps a lot. There are some people that cannot do night shift, and that they also wake up at like 5 to 6 in the morning just every day, and that is not me. So I think like that helped a lot. But it definitely takes a little like getting used to, not just for yourself, but for the other people in your life. When was in San Diego, we had to rotate for the first year. So we did 2 months of days and 2 months of nights for the first year. So we got to see both sides, which was really helpful. And then after our first year, you got to choose whether you want.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Hello? Okay.
So there was a call that came in. Okay. Um, and so you got to choose. And so I decided to just go straight nights because the rotating was really hard on the body. So then when I came here, when I moved back, I just decided to keep going straight nights because that's what I was used to. When I was living in San Diego, I was living by myself. So that was a lot easier because you could just go do your shift, go home, go to bed, and then do it all over again. And then when I moved home, like I moved home with where my parents are, and like my brother moved home, and we have a dog. And so that's a little bit harder, or was a little bit harder in the beginning. Like my dad totally was not used to me working night shift and didn't understand what that meant. And so, and then like all my friends here, if they weren't nurses, they were like normal 9 to 5 people. So that's a lot harder. So you have to find a work-life balance, and you have to like kind of just prioritize like what's important to you and what you want to spend your free time doing. And then another piece of advice that was given to me was don't feel guilty for like sleeping. A lot of times when you work night shift, you want to like get up. If you're off the next day or you're off the next 2 days, you want to get up by like noon or 2 or whatever and like do all the things that you want to do, like whether it's hang out with your friends or run errands or whatever. But then you're so tired and then you feel so guilty for like sleeping more. And yeah, one of my preceptors or my supervisors back then had told me like, don't feel guilty. Like if you need to sleep, just sleep. Like it does, whatever you have to do can wait. And so, and then you learn to like set appointments like later on in the day and like stuff like that. So it is a little rough in the beginning finding like a work-life balance. And I can't imagine, like I don't have kids right now or anything, but like I can't imagine like having kids is going to be a lot harder. But some of the nurses I've talked to say they prefer it because if you work 12 hours, you work 7 to 7 or 7 to 7:30, and technically you don't leave work until 7:30 to 8. So then by the time you get home, it's like 8:30 to 9 or whatever. And so some of the nurses who have been doing it forever have told me that like they prefer it when they have kids because they actually get to see their kids. Like they get to see their kids in the
Oh, I
morning when they
see.
get off of work. Like, drop their kids off at school or whatever, sleep while they're in school, and then like pick them up and like see them a little bit before they go to work. Versus if you work day shift, like you work before they go to school and then you get home like close to when they go to bed, so then you don't really see them at all. So it varies by the person, but yeah, I've been doing it for I guess 5 years now, and it's okay. But I don't know, like when I have kids, if I'm going to want to switch or if I can make it work with my partner or whatever. But yeah, so, and it takes a lot out of your body too, so sleep when you need it, like.
Hmm. Yeah, two questions. So, like first, what, like I imagine, first, it just seems like, it sounds like, as a new grad, that is a big possibility that everyone has to
Mhm.
go through because, if some of the more veteran nurses want the day shifts, and of course, the new grads, have to take the night shifts. So I imagine, but why do you like? Well, I guess now because you've been doing it for so long, why do you prefer night shifts? And
Mm.
also, what do you see in the difference between what you do as a night shift versus like some of your coworkers that work day shift? Like what's like the big difference?
Yeah, well, let's tackle that one first. So, um, day shift, you have a lot more movement. You have a ton of discharges. You have all the procedures. So, like if they're going to the OR or if they're going to get an MRI, um, you have rounds in during the day shift if you're at a teaching hospital. I've only worked at teaching hospitals. I don't know what a non-teaching hospital would be like, but you have rounds with the attendings and the residents, and they come and like talk to your patient and they talk to you. You have, what else? Like PTOT and speech. You have all the procedures, all the people during the day. For nights, we don't really have any of that. We have the emergent stuff, like you have the emergent OR cases, or you have the emergent like stat MRI, CT, that kind of thing. You don't have PTOT, you don't have speech, you don't have like anyone like music therapy or any of those things on nights. And that goes hand in hand with like why I like nights. So during the day, like you have all those procedures, you have all the people there. It's a lot. Your phone doesn't stop ringing. Um, and you have all the discharges and then you're admitting. And then on nights you like admit, but you're not discharging anyone really. Like no one's going home at 3 a.m. And so I really like that. Like it's a lot more quiet. If you have sick kids, like usually what happens, not all the time, but usually what happens is like you have one really sick kid and your other two are sleeping and you just have routine things or whatever. And so that's really nice. I like the people more on night shift. I also love the people on day shift, but I love the people I work with on night shift just because the camaraderie is so much stronger. One of the nurses I used to work with, I was orienting a new grad and she had asked us why we like night shift. And my coworker at the time was like saying how you have less resources on nights. And so your teamwork is so much stronger
I see.
because you can like you have to rely on each other. You also have to rely on each other to like keep you awake. Um, so I really like the people on nights. On During the day, like it gets so busy with all the different like people there and all your different things that you have to do with your kids that even if you like want stronger teamwork, it's really hard to get just because everyone's so busy with their own thing. Versus on night shift, like you're busy, but then like someone else might not be so busy and like they'll help you. Um, we do a lot of potlucks on nights because everything's closed. Um, so just the teamwork and the camaraderie is so much stronger on nights, which is why I stay on nights for the
Awesome.
most part.
Yeah, and I really like that you point that out. And do you feel like, of course, like for the majority of the time, I imagine the children are sleeping, but because you don't have to deal with like a majority of the hustle and bustle that comes with the
Yeah.
AM shifts, does that mean you get a little bit more interaction or time with the patients compared to AM
Um,
shifts?
that's funny because the girl that I'm orienting actually asked me that the other day, and she's like, "Oh, you get to like bond more with the kids," and not really. So
Oh, okay.
during day shift, everyone's awake,
Hmm.
right? Like all the parents, all the kids, like everyone's awake. And so I think you actually have more. Granted, you're busier, so if you have a busy shift, you might not get to hang out with your kids as much. But for night shift, you really only have like 4 hour window before kids go to sleep.
Hmm.
Our like for day shift, they get really busy like towards the middle and like end of their shift. And for night shift, we're really busy at the beginning. And that's because like from 7 to 11, you want to get everything done before the kids fall asleep.
Hmm.
And so you might be able to hang out with them for a little bit, but you're also so busy those first 4 hours running around between all your kids that you don't really get to bond with them. But we have chronic kids who stay there forever, like this cystic fibrosis kids I was telling you about. Like they're there for like weeks at a time, and some of them, like a lot of times, the parents don't stay, and so they go to sleep really late sometimes, so we can hang out with them then. But yeah, it's harder, I think, to like play with them or whatever on nights, just because they're usually like asleep by like 9 or 10,
I see. I see. Okay.
or try to go to sleep.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate you telling us all about that because even myself, like I feel like that's you know, there's a very real possibility that I'm gonna have to do night shift eventually, right? And I just want to just see what it was like
Yeah.
on the inside, just knowing everything about it.
I think that like you definitely have a lot less resources on nights. Like you don't have all the doctors there. You have, if you're at a teaching hospital, you have like the interns there and the senior residents and like a hospitalist, um, or like a nursing supervisor, like those people. But like you don't have like the attending. You don't have like all the doctors there, and all like management's usually not there. Like you don't have all those people at your fingertips, which makes it a little bit harder. Um, but that's where your like coworkers come into play. So
I like that. I really like that. It sounds. I like how you said how you kind of have to keep each other awake, because I imagine if I have to
yeah.
do that, I would have to. Yeah, but I also appreciate that you touched on that balance or strategies of ways how you can handle everything, because that's something that I would be worried about too. Because I feel like everybody had, like, in order to alleviate some of that stress and potential for burnout, a big part of it is your support system. But sometimes if you're on the night shift, it might be more difficult to reach out to your support system when they're all asleep, or you're asleep. But I like that you kind of touched on that, about like it's about the balance, and there are ways, like clearly you've done it successfully. Yeah.
Yeah, there are ways. I think like initially, like when I first did night shift, my boyfriend would get kind of like annoyed, like, why are you always sleeping? That kind of thing. But
Hmm.
then like eventually they like get used to it, and then your body also gets used to it. So like there's times when you can wake up earlier and do stuff. And then I mean, if you work 12-hour shifts, you technically only work 3 days a week. So you can schedule your schedule in a way that you have like a little bit more days off to like recover and do stuff. Yeah. So, I mean, for day shift, like I loved my life outside of work. It was just so busy at work, but I love my life like outside. Like a day off is a true day off. You don't have to sleep, like all that. For night shift, I love my life at work. And so you just kind of have to, and then your days off of work, like you just have to factor in like, okay, you'll be sleeping for a little bit just to recover. But then there are some people, and that's fine, where they're just not night shift people, and you just have to kind of figure that out for yourself and see if like you can do it. Because I've had new grads where I oriented them and they would be like falling asleep as I'm talking to them, and they're just not night shift people, and they usually go to bed at like 8, and I'm like, sometimes I don't eat dinner till 8. So some people aren't just, it's just not for them, and that's fine. I think when you get to that point, you just have to figure out if it's for you, and if it's not, how long you have to keep doing it before a day shift positions opens up and that kind of thing. But yeah.
How long do you see yourself doing night shift? Because even though it sounds like it is a really great situation, and like the setup is great, the teamwork is there,
Yeah.
like regardless, I feel like still just, if you're not consistently doing it on a daily basis, I feel like, imagine it takes such a huge toll on your body. Do you feel like it's something that nurses can do long term?
There are nurses who have been doing it for their entire career
Wow,
for
that's
like
crazy.
20, 30 years.
Wow.
So it can be done. For myself personally, I don't know. It depends. It depends on if I have kids and how that will affect my life then. It also depends on if I want to stay inpatient forever.
Mm.
Like if I don't want to do inpatient, like if I go to urgent care, or if I go to clinic or something, that will definitely be like a day shift position because they don't do night shift at those places. So yeah, it depends. For now, for the next like year or two, I don't anticipate that I'll go to day shift. I also love the night shift differential, so that's a
Oh
little
yeah,
hard to
that's
give up
true.
too.
Yeah, the incentive is there, I
Yeah.
imagine.
So that's really hard to give up, especially if like, you're trying to buy a house in the Bay Area
Oh
or
yeah.
like do, all that stuff. So, um, yeah, for now, and then, yeah, I just love the people I work with on night shift. So that's really hard to leave too. So it depends on a lot of factors, but for now, I think I'll still stick with night shift until my body can't handle it anymore.
Mhm.
And then you do go through bouts of like being extra tired, and night shift is extra hard for a little bit. And there's sometimes when like it's fine, like you're not that tired. So I think it just depends on like what's going on with life and all that stuff. Right now, it's a little bit easier because with COVID and then the fires, you can't really do much outside of the
Yeah,
house or work
true.
anyway. So
Yeah. Yeah. I think my biggest concern with that is just because when I get tired, I honestly, like, just mentally I'm not there, and I might not be as competent. I feel like that's a huge worry that I'm gonna have. Like, oh, if I'm like sleepy, am I gonna miss something with like meds or like an emergency? That's like, I wouldn't want to do that, but I feel like that's something that could happen, or I imagine has happened in the past.
yeah, I feel like um like you have, you have your like brain when you go into work, right? So you write everything
That's
on your
true.
brain.
Yeah.
So I kind of rely on that. Like I make sure to write everything down in the beginning of my shift. So then like when I look at it 3 or 4 in the morning when I'm extra tired, I have already written down everything I'm supposed to do. In
Mhm.
terms of like an emergency or whatever, you get adrenaline rushes all the time, like
True.
when stuff like that happens. So you
Mhm.
wake up pretty quickly. Um, but no, I mean, like, it's not like you're staying up for 24 hours. Normally, like, you sleep in between your shifts. So your sleeping is just flipped.
Mhm.
And there's things to help, like blackout curtains or like eye masks or earplugs or whatever people need. And so, um, yeah, but I don't think you'll really know until you experience it if like you can do it or not.
Mhm.
Because some people think they can and then they go through it and they're like, I really can't. And that's fine. And then there are some people who are like, well, I've never done day shift. Like the girl I'm orienting right now has never done or night shift. She's always done day shift. And so she's like learning the ways to like try to make it work because
Mhm.
she wants to give it a try.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's awesome. And as a closing statement, do you have any advice for the viewers that are listening, like what they can do or the mindset they should have if they are a aspiring pediatric nurse?
Um, I think just like keep pushing for it, even if you don't get the capstone or like your first job isn't in peds and you still really want to do peds. Just keep pushing for it because it will happen. I mean, we've hired a few people recently that have no peds experience, and so you just get extra training. It doesn't mean that like if you don't get your first job in pediatrics, it's never going to happen. It will happen. So if you want to do it, just keep pushing for it, and then I think try to get a capstone in it. Um, I don't know how it is these days. I don't know how competitive it is or how many spots there are, but yeah, I think just like if you want to do it, it will happen. You just have to be persistent and yeah, keep
Mhm.
trying to get it.
All right. Thank you so much, Cassie. We really
Yeah,
appreciate it.
you're welcome.
Yes, thank you.